Cable Bahamas has always been considered the innovator.
People can have confidence in Cable Bahamas as a mobile operator because of our past history. We've proven to the Bahamian community that we are in fact able to manage additional services as a telecommunications company.
Customers expect the best from Cable Bahamas.
The technology that we bring is revolutionary technology because we know that the Bahamian public, they deserve it, and Cable Bahamas is here to bring it to them.
We are ready. Turn us on.
The F&M chairman fires back at the PLP chairman over those conflict of interest allegations surrounding the opposition leader. This as the former deputy prime minister questions the validity of the controversy. The immigration minister pledges renewed action against shantytowns, and the PLP chairman responds to unfortunate comments made by an Anglican archdeacon. We've got those stories and more coming up tonight. I'm Dana Smith, and NB12 starts right now. Helping news tonight, Free National Movement Chairman Michael Pintard is challenging Progressive Liberal Party Chairman Bradley Roberts to release the documents which Roberts claims exposes the full extent of opposition leader Dr. Hubert Minnis's conflict of interest during his tenure as Minister of Health. Pintard said Minnis continued to benefit from the contract 3 years after the PLP took office, but has only become an issue now to distract from the Attorney General's Baha Mar conflict. Vonnie Toot reports.
Don't sing it, bring it. That was Michael Pintard's response to PLP Chairman Bradley Roberts, who yesterday threatened to release documents which he says prove that opposition leader Dr. Hubert Minnis was embroiled in a conflict of interest when he served as health minister. Pintard says while there is no doubt Minnis benefited from a PHA contract while he sat in cabinet, he does not see it as a conflict of interest. He called this entire matter a distraction.
Don't sing it, bring it. So Mr. Roberts, if armed with these files, has an obligation to turn them over to one of his colleagues so that his colleagues can lay them on the table of the House. I mean, obviously he's unable to, based on some things that are in his files, he's unable to do it in person himself.
Leisha's Investments, which named Minnis as its president, signed this 2-year lease with PHA in May 2005 to rent its Stat Care building. The total rent for that period of the lease was $180,000. Then there's the matter of these $7,500 checks, which the Public Hospitals Authority issued to the company while Minnis sat in cabinet. One check was issued on June 6, 2007, while another was issued on May 3, 2011. We asked the F&M chairman if he feels Minnis should have ended the company's arrangement with PHA once he became a cabinet minister in 2007.
No, I mean, I think one thing I would have done had I been prime minister at that time, I may have considered another ministry. However, I don't know how many ministers find themselves in that place. In other words, how many Bahamian ministers have a range of businesses so that almost no matter what ministry they go in, there is the possibility that a contract, in this case a relatively small contract, that predated their going into politics, that they would just simply divest from the company. But there are numerous government buildings that are empty. I mean, numerous government buildings where no specialized medical service is being provided has been rented by the government despite the fact that a minister owns it.
PHA files show that the month-to-month arrangement with that company continues today, 3 years after the PLP took office. Pintard said it has only become an issue now because the opposition leader called for Attorney General Alison Maynard Gibson's resignation over what he called an overt conflict of interest regarding Baha Mar.
The contract predated him entering frontline politics by 2 years. It is a contract that was first issued by the PLP, continued under the F&M month to month, and for the last 3+ years it has continued month to month under the PLP. And it seemed as if it was irrelevant until such time as Dr. Minnis challenged the PLP on the way in which they do business. And all of a sudden, it then became an issue.
The F&M chairman insisted this issue is not hurting the party.
No, I don't. Listen, I do not believe that Bradley Roberts has a great deal of credibility in the Bahamas. I believe that to the extent that The Guardian and other media houses raise these matters, some members of the public will pause and examine the details. But Mr. Roberts?
You think it's just a distraction?
Of course it is a distraction. The PLP, by its very nature, is conflicted.
Pintard called the whole issue a red herring.
They should ask whether or not Allison Gibson, the Attorney General, is the most suitable negotiator in what is a sensitive matter. The PLP has already miscalculated on multiple occasions relative to Bahama. Do you need now to throw into the equation an individual as the lead negotiator who may again raise eyebrows? It's unnecessary. Err on the side of caution. Remove the Attorney General from these discussions as the most pivotal person, because it is a distraction at this juncture.
Reporting for NB12, I'm Vonik Toot.
Meantime, former Deputy Prime Minister Brent Simonette is questioning whether the opposition leader's involvement in the Stat Care rental is really a conflict of interest. Simonette also discussed the conflict of interest which resulted in his resignation years ago. Kyle Joaquin has that angle.
Simonette says all that's going on now is mudslinging and the smearing of people's character in preparation for what he said will be an intense general election. Leach's Investments, which listed Minnis as its president, signed a 2-year lease with PHA to rent its Stat Care building. Two $7,500 checks issued to the company were dated June 6, 2007 and May 3, 2011, a time when the F&M was in power and Minnis sat in cabinet. PLP Chairman Bradley Roberts insists that while the lease was not renewed after it expired in May 2007, there continued to be a month-to-month arrangement to rent the building. While he didn't necessarily defend Minnis, Simonette said the opposition leader should be allowed to answer questions before being blasted.
Carried over. Did Minnis do anything to correct it? I don't know. But that's a potential there. If he didn't disclose it to cabinet or disclose it to the Prime Minister, I don't know that issue.
In a previous interview with our news team, Minnis said he disclosed his involvement with StatCare before he ran in 2007 and 2012. Simonette said in awarding contracts, there are a lot of things never made known to the public. He threw this challenge out to the government, in particular, the Prime Minister.
Perry Christie, Mr. Prime Minister, with all due respect, will you please disclose to the public all government's buildings that are leased, when they were leased, are the leases current, are they on month to month, and who is the land, not just company A, who's the man behind the thing?
The former DPM believes that kind of issue should be dealt with before Minnis is attacked.
Let's just disclose it. Let's disclose it. Are the leases current? Then we can deal with this issue. You know, maybe Minnis is wrong, but is he the only one?
But Simonette was himself hit with allegations of conflicts of interest. In 2001, he resigned as chairman of the airport authority after awarding a contract to Bahamas Hot Mix, a company in which his children have interests without the board of directors' approval. Years later, Simonette says he knows the way he went about it may not have been the best, but he felt the need to make an executive decision based on urgency.
Word came down that I did it the wrong way, and I resigned. So I resigned my post as chairman of the airport authority because I gave it contract to something which is the lowest bidder without the full board approval at a time the airport was going to get downgraded. I took an executive decision. Probably the wrong one. Right one for the country, wrong one. Word came down, I resigned.
But now with the PLP chairman hitting out at Minnis and defending the Attorney General despite her admission that her children and husband have interests in Bahamar, Simonette says there appears to be a double standard.
I'm one of the few people that have resigned in all the conflict of interest claims in this country. Everyone else says it's okay. So Bradley Roberts said it was wrong of me, I was conflict of interest, but yet in the same circumstances, he doesn't say it's wrong for Mrs. Allison Maynard Gibson that she should resign. So if it's right, if I was wrong, they were wrong.
Reporting for NB12, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Days after, police officers had a violent struggle with a suspect in a Gamble Heights shantytown, Immigration Minister Fred Mitchell pledged renewed action against all shantytowns in New Providence. Simone Davis reports.
Immigration Minister Fred Mitchell said officials from the Department of Immigration visited the area several times last year and attempted to clear it out, but were forced out of the community when residents got too violent and started throwing rocks at government vehicles. He noted that those actions would no longer be tolerated and no area in the Bahamas should be considered a no-go area for Bahamians.
There can be no area which is a no-go area in the Bahamas, and any unlawful settlement and unlawful settlement issues have to be addressed. There also must not be allowed to happen a situation where the country is segregated on the basis of national origin. We want an integrated and seamless country. And so the government is trying to work on all of those issues.
This Gamble Heights community was the site of a police shooting last week. Police said they shot and killed a man after he became violent with them. Mitchell said his main concern is the national security of the country and restoring law and order.
My concern is the national security aspect. The environment minister would have to deal. I think he's identified other places, and I know that people in neighboring constituencies to Fox Hill have been talking about these other areas. But it's a national security point that I'm making, that there has to be law and order everywhere in the Bahamas. Everyone has to conform to the laws, rules, and regulations, and there are no no-go areas. We're not targeting anybody. This is not, going in and mashing up people's belongings and all the rest of it. This is an exercise to make sure that law and order is restored in communities where there is no law and order.
The immigration minister noted that he is in talks with the Minister for the Environment, Kenred Dorset, on steps the government should take to rid the country of these shanty towns. A government report on shanty towns released in 2013 found that there were at least 15 of these communities in New Providence. Since then, the government has carried out several demolition exercises in those illegal communities. Mitchell said the government has a responsibility to ensure that law and order prevail in the country.
I've spoken to the minister responsible for the environment about trying to galvanize resources to put into the removal, to having an operation which includes police, defense force, and immigration, and the removal of these unlawful settlements, and doing an immigration exercise that deals with people who are not here unlawfully. One of the things anecdotally we've heard, and to some extent driven by intelligence, is that where you have unlawful settlements, it is a sink for people who come in unlawfully. They can go into what they consider a no-go area because the authorities, they believe, can't come into those areas, and then hide out until they do whatever they wish to do. And we don't want any of those things to ensue in the Bahamas.
He added that the public's attention should be shifted to assisting the government in getting these issues under control once and for all. Reporting for NB12, I'm Simone Davis.
Labor Minister Shane Gibson today said he would be very disappointed if employers use the minimum wage increase as an excuse to lay off staff, asserting officials settled on the 40% increase only after extensive consultation with the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce, which represents employers.
I would be very disappointed if employers would find it difficult to give employees increases that would be relevant to the various increases in the cost of living and the increases in the retail price index. Also, I would be disappointed because the employers were represented around the table by the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce and the Employers Confederation. We went to great pains to ensure that all of the social partners were involved in all of the discussions. And so hopefully it wouldn't come to that. I mean, I'm concerned about it because obviously you don't want any job losses.
The national minimum wage increased to $210 a week over the weekend.
People always use all sorts of things as an excuse. When national insurance was being implemented in 1974, at that time they said that if you implement national insurance, they would have to reduce employment. When the minimum wage was introduced, the same thing when VAT was introduced. Anytime you do anything that would cause businesses to pay more monies than they're used to paying, then the first thing they would do, as a matter of fact, even when you try to have them pay their electricity bill. So you'll find, I don't think Atlantis is in that category, but you'll find many of the larger developments and resorts owe BEC lots of monies. And anytime you try to clamp down on them to pay what they owe BEC, the first thing they will say is we have to reduce staff. So anything that would cause them to spend money, they use as an excuse to reduce staff.
However, he noted the minimum wage increase is in the best interests of struggling Bahamians.